Tonight, we begin a quiet journey through a history so gentle, so uneventful, and so ordinary that your eyes may become heavy before we even reach the halfway point. This is not the history of great battles or famous inventions. No, this is the soft, subtle story of small American things, objects, routines, and places most people overlook every day. And as we move through each chapter, the rhythm of the telling becomes slower, softer, and more peaceful, inviting your mind to unwind. So, take a deep breath, settle into your pillow, and let this sleepy history carry you into rest. Long before the modern city park became a common feature in the United States, people still needed somewhere to rest. The earliest benches were nothing more than simple wooden planks placed outside colonial meeting houses. They were stiff, uncomfortable, and very straightforward. Exactly the kind of unremarkable detail that history normally skips. But in the 1800s, American towns began adding small public squares. And with those squares came benches, long, plain benches made of pine. They didn't have armrests, curves, or artistic carvings, just long lines of smooth, sturdy wood where people could sit and watch nothing much happen. By the early 1900s, steel benches arrived. Black, heavy, durable. They warmed in the sun and cooled in the evening. And slowly, benches became a part of everyday American quietness. Outside post offices, in front of libraries, beside quiet lakes, and along sleepy sidewalks. Even today, a bench is not designed to be exciting. It is designed to simply be there, quiet, steady, waiting for someone who needs a moment to pause. A perfect example of history that moves very slowly and very uneventfully.
The development of American mailboxes. The mailbox is another peaceful invention. The earliest versions in the United States appeared in the mid 1800s when people realized it was easier for mail carriers to drop letters into a container than to constantly knock on doors. These early mailboxes were handmade using simple metal sheets or leftover pieces of wood. They weren't painted. They didn't have numbers. They didn't even close properly. They were just boxes, quiet, reliable boxes that stood near fences or porches. By the 1920s, the familiar rounded top mailbox became common in rural America. The curved shape wasn't for beauty or symbolism. It simply helped rain slide off more easily. Over time, little red flags were added so people could signal outgoing letters. Today, mailboxes remain mostly unchanged. Still simple, still ordinary, still quietly serving a purpose without anyone noticing. History doesn't get more soothing than that. A sleepy history of American front porches. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, American houses began including porches, not for decoration, but for temperature control. Before air conditioning, porches helped keep the house shaded. Families sat outside in the evenings, enjoying cooler air, waving at neighbors, or simply rocking back and forth. Rural porches were usually wide, with enough space for a rocking chair or two. Meanwhile, city porches were small, just enough room for one person to sit quietly and watch the street. Across decades, porches became symbols of slow life. People drank lemonade, shelled peas, read newspapers, or simply sat in silence. Nothing dramatic, nothing eventful, just the slow passing of afternoon into evening, porch to porch, town to town. Today, many porches look exactly the same as they did 80 years ago. Soft wood, simple railings, and the easy creak of a rocking chair. The history of American light poles. Light poles are so ordinary that most people never think about them, but their history is a gentle one. Before electricity, American streets were lit with oil lamps. A light lamper would walk each evening, glowing flame held softly in hand, lighting lamps one by one. It was a peaceful job, slow, rhythmic, predictable. With electric lighting in the late 1800s, wooden poles were placed along dirt roads. They were roughly carved and often leaned slightly to one side, but they worked well enough. By the 1900s, steel poles replaced wood. They stood taller, straighter, and lasted much longer. Their purpose was singular: to illuminate sidewalks and streets just enough for calm evening walks. Today, the modern American light pole remains one of the simplest objects in society. A vertical line of metal, a standard bulb fixture, no decoration, no complexity. Just a soft, steady light against the darkness.
A gentle history of rest stops. America's rest stops developed slowly alongside the interstate highways. In the 1950s, as the highway system expanded, travelers needed simple places to stop, stretch, and breathe. Early rest stops had nothing but a picnic table and a trash bin. Later, small brick buildings were added, with quiet hallways and vending machines that hummed softly. To this day, rest stops are some of the calmest places in the country. Empty parking lots, quiet whispering trees, the gentle hum of distant traffic. They're not designed for excitement, they're designed for pause. Just like this story. The soft history of American water towers. The water tower is a surprisingly peaceful structure. Most were built between the 1930s and 1980s. A tall stem, a rounded tank, a name of a town painted in large, simple letters. Their purpose is purely practical: hold water so gravity can help it flow through pipes. But their presence is comforting. Many small American towns still have a single water tower that rises gently against the sky. In the evening, when the air cools and the wind slows, the silhouette of a water tower becomes a familiar, quiet friend of the landscape. Always there, always steady. Just like history itself. The boring, peaceful evolution of American sidewalks. Sidewalks first appeared in busy American cities like Boston and New York in the early 1800s. They were made of simple stone slabs, uneven and often cracked. Later, in the 1900s, concrete sidewalks became the standard. Rows of squares, divided by expansion lines, stretching calmly through neighborhoods. Sidewalks don't rush. They don't shout. They simply guide footsteps, one slow step at a time, from one peaceful place to another. And as we walk along them through this story, the rhythm becomes slower and softer. Step by step by step. The unhurried history of American doorsteps. The American doorstep has been around since the days when homes were built close to the ground. Early wooden cottages had simple planks laid across stones so that mud wouldn't cling to shoes. Most were uneven, many creaked, but they served their purpose quietly. In the 1800s, as brick houses appeared, doorsteps became smoother, wide, gentle slabs of stone placed just below the door. People didn't rush across them. They paused, wiped their shoes, or stood there talking to neighbors about the weather. By the early 1900s, porches became more common, but the humble doorstep remained. Even today, millions of American homes still have that simple, unremarkable step, an unnoticed transition between outdoors and indoors. A small, steady part of daily life. Nothing dramatic, just the quiet place you stand before entering home. The calm history of American window curtains. In the early colonial days, American homes didn't have curtains at all. Windows were small and glass was expensive. People used cloth scraps or wooden shutters for privacy. But as the 1800s progressed, curtains became common. They were usually plain, linen, cotton, or muslin, sometimes white, sometimes soft beige, sometimes a faded blue. They swayed gently in the breeze, letting filtered sunlight travel across quiet rooms. In the early 20th century, lace curtains appeared, delicate patterns that hung softly and silently, catching dust and diffusing the light. They rarely changed styles quickly. A single curtain set might last 20 years. Even now, curtains remain one of the slowest changing parts of home decor. They open, they close. They rustle slightly when someone walks past. They move only when the breeze invites them. Soft, steady, peaceful. A soothing history of American park pathways. Long ago, parks in the United States were simply open spaces. Grass, trees, maybe a small pond. There were no paths, no guiding lines. People walked wherever they liked. Then, in the mid-1800s, the first formal parks, like Central Park, introduced gently curving pathways. Designers purposely avoided straight lines because curves made the walk feel slower, more relaxing. These early paths were made of compacted dirt or gravel. Footsteps created soft crunching sounds, and in rainy weather, they turned muddy and sticky, slowing visitors even more. By the 20th century, concrete paths became common, still curved, still slow, still peaceful. Even today, a walk along a quiet American park path feels timeless. Soft breezes, falling leaves, the gentle scrape of shoes against stone. A perfectly boring part of history. And the soothing one. The still history of American ceiling fans. Before electric fans existed, people used hand fans, slow, gentle waves of air moving back and forth. But in the late 1800s, the first ceiling fans appeared in hotels and dining halls powered by water pumps. These early fans spun slowly, much slower than modern ones. They weren't designed for strong cooling, only for mild comfort, a soft, steady rotation. By the 20th century, electric ceiling fans became common in American homes. They had pulled chains, quiet motors, and 3 or 4 wooden blades. Most homes kept them for decades. Some fans from the 1950s are still turning today, slowly, rhythmically, almost hypnotically. A ceiling fan is never in a hurry. Its whole purpose is calm movement. The gentle evolution of American picnic tables. Picnic tables began appearing in public parks in the early 1900s, simple wooden planks supported by rough, sturdy legs. They were not designed for beauty, only for function. A flat surface, a place to sit, a place to rest. Over time, picnic tables became standard equipment at state parks, campgrounds, and highway rest areas. The design barely changed. A tabletop, 2 benches, some screws, some bolts, some weathered wood. Modern picnic tables still followed the same pattern. They may be plastic, metal, or composite material, but their shape remains the same. Steady, familiar, quietly inviting. They host sandwiches, water bottles, travel maps, and long moments of doing absolutely nothing. A perfect piece of boring history. The unchanging history of American wall clocks. The first wall clocks in America were large and wooden, ticking slowly with heavy gears. People didn't look at them often. Time moved at a gentler pace. In the early 1900s, smaller clocks appeared in kitchens, libraries, schools, and offices. The design was almost always the same: round, white face, black numbers, a soft ticking sound that echoed faintly in empty rooms. By the late 1900s, quiet quartz clocks became common. They used batteries instead of winding mechanisms. Yet the design barely changed at all. Round, simple, peaceful. A wall clock is one of the few objects that marks the passing of time without rushing it. Each second passes softly, quietly, predictably. Tick, tick, tick. A lullaby of moments drifting onward. The slow development of American porcelain sinks. In the early 1800s, American homes didn't have sinks. People used wash basins, simple metal bowls filled with cold water from a pump. Later, porcelain sinks appeared in wealthier homes. They were smooth, white, and heavy. They didn't change much over decades. A faucet, a drain, a quiet place for water to flow. By the 20th century, sinks became common everywhere, and yet their design remained almost identical to those early models. White, rounded, calm. Water trickles softly. Soap glides easily. Everything about a sink feels slow and predictable. A quiet detail of everyday life. A peaceful history of American shelves. Shelves have existed in homes for centuries, but in American houses, shelves began as simple planks nailed to walls in kitchens, barns, and pantries. They held jars, tools, folded cloth, always quietly, without any rush. As years passed, shelves became smoother, wider, made of better wood. Some painted white, some left natural.
Year after year. An extremely calming piece of everyday history. The dreamy history of American bedroom lamps. Bedroom lamps arrived in American homes in the 1800s when oil lamps replaced candles. They cast soft, warm light across wooden floors. Then, in the early 1900s, electric lamps became standard. Simple brass bases, fabric lamp shades, quiet click switches. Their glow was warm, safe, and gentle. No matter how technology changed, the purpose of a bedroom lamp remained the same: create a small circle of comfortable light in an otherwise dark room. Even today, lamps are quiet companions. They don't flicker, they don't rush, they simply illuminate softly, encouraging rest.
The steady history of American driveways. Driveways began as dirt paths leading from roads to barns or houses, dusty, uneven, and shaped by wagon wheels. Later, gravel driveways became common. The small stones created a peaceful crunching sound, one of the quietest yet most nostalgic sounds in all of America. By the mid-1900s, concrete driveways spread across suburbs, smooth gray surfaces with slow-drying lines that divided each section. Today, driveways still look the same: quiet spaces connecting cars to homes, an unchanging part of the American landscape. The soft history of American street signs. The earliest American street signs were wooden boards painted with simple black letters. Nothing fancy, nothing decorative. Later, in the 1900s, metal signs replaced wood. They turned green, then reflective green. Their shapes standardized: rectangles for names, octagons for stops, circles for routes. Street signs don't change often. They stay in the same place for decades, lightly rusting, gently aging. They stand quietly at corners, pointing, informing, never rushing. The peaceful history of American garden hoses. The earliest American garden hoses in the 1800s were made from stitched leather. They were stiff, awkward, and leaked often, yet they helped water plants slowly and steadily. As rubber manufacturing improved, hoses became flexible, smoother, and easier to coil. By the mid-1900s, almost every suburban home had a green rubber hose curled beside the house like a quiet sleeping snake. Garden hoses haven't changed much since then. Still long, still simple, still resting quietly in the shade until someone gently turns on the tap. A small, peaceful tool for the slow nurturing of plants and lawns. The soft evolution of American screen doors. Before air conditioners were common, screen doors were essential during warm months. Their earliest versions were handmade wooden frames covered with woven wire mesh. They opened with a gentle creak, closed with a slow, familiar thunk, and allowed breezes to drift through living rooms and kitchens. By the 1950s and 60s, aluminum screen doors became standard, but their behavior stayed the same. A soft creak, a quiet swing, a slow closing sound that echoed in countless summer evenings. Even now, many American homes still have screen doors that sound exactly like they did decades ago.
A gentle history of American mail trucks. Early U.S. mail trucks were small wagons pulled by horses. Their wheels turned slowly, carrying letters across dirt roads and quiet fields. In the early 1900s, motor vehicles replaced horses. These new trucks were boxy, slow, and painted in simple colors, usually white or gray. By the late 1900s, the iconic white, red, and blue mail truck was everywhere, moving calmly from street to street, stopping at nearly every house, never in a rush. Mail trucks are still among the slowest vehicles on American roads, not because they need to be, but because their job is steady and patient. The sleepy history of American coat racks. The first American coat racks were simple wooden pegs hammered into walls. They held hats, coats, scarves, and nothing else. Later, standing coat racks appeared. Tall, slender poles with curved branches that held layers of clothing. They were found in entryways, offices, and waiting rooms. Coat racks don't change much. They simply stand there, year after year, supporting coats through seasons of cold, rain, and wind. Even an empty coat rack has a calm presence, still, quiet, patient. The slow development of American side tables. Side tables began as small stands for oil lamps in the 1800s. They were plain wooden squares with 4 legs, nothing fancy, nothing fast. As the years passed, side tables shifted slightly in design. Round, then rectangular, then square again, but the function remained the same, holding lamps, books, glasses, and small objects people didn't want to misplace. In living rooms, bedrooms, porches, and offices, side tables have always been there. silent companions of everyday life. A simple surface, a place to rest things, a tiny corner of stability. The slow, simple history of American train station benches. Train stations in America once had long, heavy wooden benches. Their surfaces were polished smooth by decades of travelers waiting, reading, dozing. Some benches were so long they stretched the entire length of a wall. They didn't try to be comfortable. They simply offered a place to sit while time moved quietly. By the mid-20th century, steel benches replaced wooden ones. Cold in winter, warm in summer, but always steady. Even today, if you sit in a quiet American train station late at night, you can still feel the gentle, slow history of the bench beneath you. A peaceful history of American floor mats. The earliest American floor mats were woven by hand from straw or old cloth. They sat quietly in front of doors, catching dust and dirt in soft silence. Later, rubber and fabric mats appeared. Rugged, durable, plain. Homes, shops, and offices placed them near entrances, where they stayed there for years without moving. Floor mats rarely change. They stay in the same spot, doing the same job, absorbing footsteps and wiping shoes. Soft, steady guardians of clean floors. The relaxing history of American thermoses. The first thermoses in America appeared in the early 1900s. They were made of metal, glass, and cork. Their purpose was simple: keep drinks warm or cool. Workers carried them to factories. Students carried them to school. Travelers carried them on long car rides. They were never flashy, never loud, never exciting. Just quiet containers holding warm soup, tea, or coffee. Modern thermoses look sleeker, but they remain just as peaceful. Always insulated, always steady, always keeping things warm at a slow, quiet pace. The calm history of American house numbers. Before house numbers existed, mail carriers had to guess which home belonged to which family. So in the 1800s, cities began assigning numbers to houses. Early numbers were hand-painted on wood or metal plates, sometimes crooked, sometimes faded, but always dependable. By the mid-1900s, standardized metal or plastic numbers were used everywhere, white on black or black on white. House numbers rarely change. They cling to walls, porches, and mailboxes for decades. A small piece of order in a quiet neighborhood.
The gentle evolution of American laundry baskets. Laundry baskets began as wicker baskets, light brown, woven, soft. They held clothes, sheets, towels, and sometimes even sleeping cats. Plastic baskets became common in the late 1900s, white or light blue with large holes for airflow. Their shape became standardized, rectangular, easy to carry, slightly flexible. Laundry baskets have one job. They do it slowly. They do it quietly. They collect the soft, everyday fabrics of American life and carry them from room to room.
The Peaceful History of American Bulletin Boards. Bulletin boards began as simple cork sheets tacked onto walls in schools, offices, and churches. Their purpose was modest: hold paper notes, flyers, and announcements. Over time, bulletin boards became slightly neater, wooden frames, cleaner lines, but their function never changed. Paper pinned quietly, thumbtacks sliding in with a soft press, notes curling gently over weeks. A slow medium of communication in a world filled with noise. The still evolution of American drapery rods. Before drapery rods existed, Americans hung curtains using hooks, nails, or loops. But as homes modernized in the early 1900s, metal curtain rods became common. They were simple cylinders, brass or silver, running across windows. Some had decorative ends, but most were plain. Drapery rods have barely changed since. They hang in the same place for years, supporting slow-moving curtains that rise and fall with gentle hands. A quiet line across the top of a window. The uneventful history of American park drinking fountains. The first American drinking fountains appeared in the late 1800s. They were carved stone basins with slow streams of water. Later, metal fountains became standard. Simple push-button designs releasing a soft, curved arc of water. Park fountains don't hurry. They remain in the same spot for decades, cooling countless hands and faces on warm afternoons. Their gentle trickle is one of the calmest sounds in public spaces. The slow, steady history of American clipboards. Clipboards began as sturdy wooden boards with a metal clip. Offices, classrooms, warehouses, and clinics used them. They allowed people to write while standing, moving, or waiting. But clipboards never changed quickly. They were always rectangular, always flat, always quietly useful. By the late 20th century, plastic clipboards appeared, but even these shared the same timeless design. A simple surface for simple tasks. The peaceful story of American picnic blankets. In early America, people used whatever cloth they had for outdoor picnics. Old quilts, heavy blankets, or spare sheets. By the 1900s, dedicated picnic blankets appeared, often with plaid patterns, soft textures, and a calm combination of colors. They spread across grass slowly, wrinkling gently, hosting quiet afternoons beneath open skies. A picnic blanket never rushes. It simply lies there, supporting peaceful moments. The gentle evolution of American post office counters. Old post office counters were wooden with brass details. Clerks stood behind them, stamping envelopes with slow, rhythmic motions. Modern counters use laminate or metal, but the rhythm remains the same. A customer waits, a clerk sorts, a stamp presses down. The next person steps forward. The pace is steady, predictable, unchanged through the decades. Post offices are among the calmest public spaces in America. Quiet routines performed again and again. The still, simple history of American window frames. Early American window frames were crafted by hand, thick wooden borders surrounding small panes of glass. As glass became easier to produce, frames grew larger but remained simple, white or natural wood, quietly aging over time. Modern frames use vinyl or aluminum, but the shape stays almost identical to earlier versions.
A window frame is one of the least changing objects in American homes, holding the glass that lets soft sunlight drift inside.